My name is Dr. Richard Cole, and I'm a 52-year-old cardiothoracic surgeon at Presbyterian Hospital in Dallas. I received the text message that would change everything while standing beside my father's casket, still wearing the black suit I'd barely had time to put on after a 14-hour surgery. The message was from my wife of 18 years, Valerie. Sorry for your loss, both of them. Your retirement funds have been moved to a safer account. We'll discuss details when you're ready to be reasonable about our future. I read it twice, my hands steady despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. Around me, cousins and family friends offered condolences about Dad's sudden heart attack, their voices blending into white noise. My father, the man who'd worked 3 jobs to put me through medical school, lay before us while my wife chose this exact moment, to steal my life's work. The attachment showed a bank transfer confirmation, $2.3 million, my entire retirement account, built over 25 years of saving, investing, and careful planning, gone. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and shook another hand, accepted another hug, smiled when someone shared a memory about Dad's generosity. Nobody noticed the change in my expression because there wasn't one to notice. 25 years of surgery had taught me to compartmentalize, to function when everything inside wanted to shut down. That evening, after the last mourner had left Mom's house, I sat in Dad's study and opened Instagram on my phone. Valerie's latest post was from Miami Beach, timestamp showing it was uploaded 3 hours ago. She was wearing a yellow bikini I'd never seen before, her arm around a man with dark hair and the kind of sculpted physique that spoke of personal training and protein shakes. The caption read, "Finally living my truth. Sometimes you have to wait for the right moment to start over." The man's name was tagged Carlos Martinez, tennis pro and life coach. I scrolled through his profile. 43 years old, based in Miami, specializing in helping successful women rediscover their passion for life. His client testimonials were telling. All recently divorced women with significant settlement money. I closed the app and called my financial advisor, Robert Chen, even though it was past 9 p.m. "Richard, I'm so sorry about your father," he said immediately. "I tried calling you earlier." "About the retirement account transfer?" A pause. "You know about that?" "Valerie sent me a confirmation. What exactly happened?" "She came in this morning with what appeared to be a power of attorney document and medical forms, claiming you were experiencing severe stress and had authorized her to move funds for safekeeping. The signatures looked authentic and she knew your account numbers, security questions, everything." I felt the first crack in my composure. "And you processed it?" "I started to, but our new biometric security system flagged it. We've required thumbprint confirmation for all major transfers since last year. When she couldn't provide that, we declined the transaction and placed a security hold on the account." For the first time in 2 days, I almost smiled. The system I complained about installing, the very one. She became quite agitated when I explained we needed you present for any transfer over $50,000. She insisted you were having a breakdown and couldn't travel, but our policy is absolute. I thanked Robert and hung up, then walked to Dad's old filing cabinet. He'd been a methodical man, a mechanic who kept detailed records of everything. In the back of the bottom drawer, I found what I was looking for. The folder labeled Richard's Documents that he'd maintained since my childhood. Inside were copies of my birth certificate, medical school diplomas, and something that made me pause. A newspaper clipping from my wedding day 18 years ago. Dad had written in the margin, "Hope she makes him as happy as she seems to make herself." Even then, he'd seen something I'd missed. I thought about Valerie's behavior over the past 6 months. The sudden interest in wellness retreats that always seemed to conflict with my schedule. The new wardrobe and gym membership. The way she'd started asking detailed questions about our finances, especially after Dad's first heart episode last spring. She'd been planning this for months. waiting for the perfect opportunity when I'd be emotionally vulnerable and physically distant. My father's death wasn't just convenient timing, it was the moment she'd been waiting for. The cruelest part wasn't the attempted theft. It was that she'd chosen to destroy our marriage on the day I buried the man who'd sacrificed everything to give me the career that earned the money she was trying to steal. I pulled out my laptop and began making notes. The same methodical approach I used when planning complex surgeries. The difference was that this time, I wasn't trying to save a life. I was trying to save everything my father had worked to help me build. What Valerie didn't know was that a surgeon's training goes far beyond the operating room. We learn to anticipate complications, to prepare for worst-case scenarios, and to remain calm when everything goes wrong. She'd chosen the wrong profession to steal from. The next morning, I called my attorney from the hospital parking garage before my first surgery. James Harrison had handled our estate planning for years, and his voice was grim when I explained the situation. "She forged your signature on a power of attorney?" "According to Robert, yes, and medical documents claiming I was having a breakdown." "That's federal fraud, Richard, multiple felonies." A pause. "How well do you know this Carlos Martinez?" "I know his Instagram handle and his profession. Why?" "I'm running a background check now. Tennis pro, life coach," I heard typing. "Interesting. Carlos Roberto Martinez, age 43? Resident of Miami Beach, 2 previous arrests for fraud, 1 conviction for identity theft in 2019, served 18 months, currently on probation." I leaned back against my car. "She's involved with a convicted felon." "It gets better. He's been flagged by the Florida Attorney General's office as part of an investigation into romance scams targeting wealthy divorcees. His pattern is always the same. Befriend lonely wives, convince them their husbands are hiding assets, help them secure their financial future. Meaning steal everything they can before filing for divorce." "Exactly. You're probably not his first target this year." That afternoon, I met James at his office downtown. He'd prepared a comprehensive strategy that felt as precise as any surgical procedure I'd ever planned. "First, we file for emergency injunctions on all marital assets," he explained, sliding documents across his desk. "Your retirement account is already protected thanks to the biometric security. But we need to lock down everything else. The house, her business accounts, joint investments. All of it. Second, we petition for immediate divorce, citing fraud and criminal conspiracy. Texas law is very clear about marital misconduct involving financial crimes." "And Carlos?" James smiled. "That's where it gets interesting. I've been in contact with Detective Sarah Mitchell from Dallas PD's Financial Crimes Unit. They've been tracking Carlos for months in connection with at least 3 other similar cases. Your situation might be the one that finally gives them enough evidence to arrest him." We spent 2 hours going through my financial records, documenting every account, every asset, every investment. James was particularly interested in the timeline of Valerie's questions about my retirement fund. "She's been researching your account since March," he noted, reviewing my phone records. "Look at these calls to your financial advisor's office. 6 different conversations where she claimed to be calling on your behalf. Robert never mentioned that. Client confidentiality. He couldn't tell you she was fishing for information unless you specifically asked." James made another note. "But he can certainly testify about it now." That evening, I received a call from Detective Mitchell. Her voice was professional, but urgent. "Dr. Cole, I understand you've been contacted by Carlos Martinez through your wife?" "Not directly, but yes." "We've been building a case against him for months. He's part of a larger operation that specifically targets high-net-worth professionals during times of personal crisis. Deaths in the family, medical emergencies, major life changes.
How many others?
At least 12 confirmed victims in the past 3 years. Total losses exceed $4 million. The pattern is always the same. Befriend a wife who has access to significant assets. Create a sense of urgency about protecting money from an allegedly unreliable husband. Then disappear once the funds are transferred.
And the wives?
Sometimes they're victims. Sometimes they're willing participants. That's what we need to determine with your case.
Detective Mitchell explained that they'd been monitoring Carlos's communications for weeks. They knew about his relationship with Valerie, knew about their plan to access my retirement funds during Dad's funeral, knew about the forged documents.
What we need is a controlled confrontation,
She explained.
We want to record Carlos explaining his methodology, admitting to the document forgery, ideally discussing the other victims.
You want me to wear a wire?
We want you to call your wife and demand a face-to-face meeting to discuss the divorce. We'll be monitoring everything.
I agreed immediately. This wasn't just about recovering my money anymore. It was about stopping a predator who had turned personal tragedies into profit opportunities. The next morning, I called Valerie from my office between surgeries.
Richard,
Her voice was bright, almost cheerful.
I'm so glad you're ready to talk reasonably about this.
I want to meet. Tonight. To discuss terms.
Of course. That's very mature of you. Carlos has some excellent insights about how to handle these transitions smoothly.
Carlos will be there?
He's been such a help through this difficult time. He really understands the financial complexities of medical practice divorces.
I bet he did. We arranged to meet at a restaurant downtown. Neutral territory. What Valerie didn't know was that Detective Mitchell and her team would be at nearby tables, recording everything. That afternoon, I performed surgery on a 60-year-old man whose wife held his hand in pre-op, tears in her eyes, as she told him she'd be waiting when he woke up. 24 years of marriage, she said, through everything. As I scrubbed out afterward, I thought about the difference between the woman crying in my recovery room and the woman posting bikini photos while her husband buried his father. Some people honor their vows. Others simply wait for the right moment to break them. Tonight, I'd find out which category Valerie fell into, and more importantly, I'd help ensure that Carlos Martinez never got the chance to turn another tragedy into his personal payday. The restaurant was crowded, which worked in our favor. Detective Mitchell and her team blended seamlessly among the dinner crowd, positioned at strategic tables with clear sightlines to our booth. I wore a wire so small I'd forgotten about it by the time Valerie and Carlos arrived. She looked different, younger somehow, with new highlights in her hair and a confidence I hadn't seen in years. Carlos was exactly what I'd expected. Polished, charming, the kind of man who'd learned to weaponize his smile. "Richard, I'm so sorry about your father," Valerie said, sliding into the booth across from me. "I know this timing isn't ideal, but sometimes life forces difficult decisions." Carlos extended his hand. "Carlos Martinez, Valerie's told me so much about you. I want you to know I have tremendous respect for your profession. My own father was a surgeon in Colombia before we immigrated." I shook his hand, noting the expensive watch, the manicured nails, the way his eyes immediately assessed the value of my wedding ring. "And you're helping my wife with what exactly?" "Financial planning, primarily. Wealth preservation during life transitions." His accent was slight, carefully modulated. "Valerie mentioned you've been under considerable stress, losing a parent while managing a surgical practice. That's overwhelming for anyone." "Which is why I signed those power of attorney documents, right?" Valerie shifted uncomfortably. "Richard, you were barely functioning. Someone had to protect our assets." "Our assets," I kept my voice level, "including my retirement fund." Carlos leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Dr. Cole, I've worked with many medical professionals going through divorce. The statistics are alarming.
Doctors lose an average of 60% of their wealth in divorce proceedings. Valerie was simply being proactive. By forging my signature, the silence stretched for several seconds. Carlos recovered first, his smile never wavering. I think there's been a misunderstanding. The documents I helped Valerie prepare were based on your verbal authorization. She recorded several conversations where you discussed wanting to secure your retirement funds. Really? I'd love to hear those recordings. Another pause. Valerie's confidence was beginning to crack. Richard, you're being deliberately difficult. We're trying to have an adult conversation about our future. Our future ended when you decided to steal my money during my father's funeral.
Carlos's mask slipped slightly. Look, doctor, I understand you're emotional, but let's discuss facts. Your wife has legitimate concerns about asset protection. I've seen cases where vindictive spouses have deliberately destroyed retirement accounts out of spite. So you help wives steal the money before their husbands can spite destroy it? I help people protect what they've earned. His voice hardened. Valerie worked for 18 years to support your career. She sacrificed her own ambitions, her own financial independence. She deserves security. And what do you deserve, Carlos? 10%? 20%? He smiled again, but it was different now. Colder, more calculating. I provide a valuable service. Peace of mind is worth whatever people are willing to pay for it. How many people have paid you for that peace of mind? I don't discuss other clients. What about Margaret Thornton? Did you discuss other clients with her? I watched his face change as I mentioned a name Detective Mitchell had given me, one of Carlos's previous victims, or Jennifer Walsh, Patricia Brennan. Carlos stood abruptly. I think this conversation is over. Sit down, Carlos. The voice came from behind him. Detective Mitchell appeared with her badge visible, flanked by 2 uniformed officers. You're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit grand larceny. The restaurant went quiet. Carlos's charming mask finally shattered completely. This is harassment, he said, but his voice cracked. I haven't done anything illegal. We have recordings of you discussing document forgery, Detective Mitchell replied, handcuffing him. We have testimony from 4 previous victims. We have bank records showing your pattern of theft across 3 states. Valerie stared at the handcuffs in shock. This is insane. Carlos, tell them, ma'am, you're also under arrest as an accessory to fraud. I watched my wife of 18 years realize that her new life of freedom and passion was about to become something very different. The bikini photos from Miami seemed like they'd been taken in another century. Richard, she said as Detective Mitchell read her rights, this isn't how I wanted things to end. No, I replied, standing to leave. You wanted them to end with you stealing my retirement fund and disappearing to Florida with a convicted felon. I'm sorry that didn't work out for you. 3 months later, Carlos pled guilty to federal fraud charges and received 8 years in federal prison. The investigation he triggered led to the recovery of over $3 million stolen from 12 victims, including a Navy veteran who'd lost his disability settlement and a widow who'd been convinced to protect her late husband's life insurance money. Valerie pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy and received 3 years probation, community service, and full restitution. Our divorce was finalized with her receiving exactly what Texas law entitled her to, which was significantly less than the $2.3 million she'd tried to steal. I used part of my recovered retirement fund to establish the William Cole Memorial Scholarship at the community college where my father had taken night classes to become a certified mechanic. It provides full tuition for students whose parents work in skilled trades, the kind of people who sacrifice everything to give their children better opportunities. 6 months after the trial, I received a letter from Margaret Thornton, one of Carlos's previous victims. She'd recovered most of her stolen money and wanted to thank me for helping bring him to justice. She included a photo of her grandson's college graduation, paid for with the money Carlos had tried to steal. Dad would have loved that photo. He understood that the greatest wealth isn't what you accumulate, but what you preserve for the people who come after you. Sometimes the people closest to you will try to take everything you've worked for. But if you're prepared, if you stay calm under pressure, and if you remember that the system works for those who understand how to use it, justice isn't just possible, it's inevitable. The hardest part wasn't losing Valerie. It was realizing that the woman I'd married had been gone for years, replaced by someone who saw my father's death as a business opportunity. But in the end, she chose her own path, and I chose mine. Today, I still perform surgery 5 days a week. I still save lives, still solve problems that seem impossible. The difference is that now I also know how to protect what matters most, not just from medical emergencies, but from the people who mistake trust for weakness. My father taught me that a man's character is revealed not by what he does when life is easy, but by how he responds when everything falls apart. I think he would have been proud of how I handled this surgery.